All right, earlier today on the 208, we started our 7 Investigate series looking into the Idaho Freedom Foundation. We talked about how last legislative session, Idaho lawmakers reduced or refused education budgets in Idaho based on a false narrative of critical race theory and social justice indoctrination being pushed on Idaho students at all levels. It was a false narrative pushed by the IFF, a nonprofit with growing influence at the Statehouse.
Influence that current and former state leaders keep calling out even today on social media, as we've seen, not just because of the weight the organization carries, but because of the tactics they use. Look no further than the Freedom Index to see their outsized influence. The Freedom Foundation says the goal with this scorecard is to make legislation transparent and accessible, but several legislators say it crosses a line in telling lawmakers what bills to bring and how to vote. Inside this building,
the House will be in order.
Some lawmakers say
the first order of business is
one organization's opinion causes division in our state.
I am deeply concerned and deeply troubled by it.
the House will now advance to the third order of business.
Have you ever seen this with a nonprofit before, having that much influence on what goes on the House floor?
No, they are very unique in that regard.
That unique influence comes in the form of nonprofit Idaho Freedom Foundation's most prized project, the Idaho Freedom Index. The Freedom Foundation says the goal is to make state legislation transparent. They say they made the index to show which legislators vote for more government and which support lower taxes, fewer regulations, and more personal liberty. Here's how the index works. In real time, as bills are introduced in the legislature, IFF's analysts rate them. And they rate all lawmakers based on how they vote for those bills. Its lobbying arm, Idaho Freedom Action, pushes the same index to endorse bills. The group's analysts score proposed legislation using what they call 12 criteria of freedom. Those mostly fall under the question of, does the bill grow or shrink government? Bills are given +1 or -1 point on each of the relevant criteria. For example, this session, IFF gave House Bill 443 a -3 rating. The bill sets up a fund so Idaho can spend $105 million a year plus a one-time buy-in of up to $75.5 million to move government school employees onto the state health insurance plan. In contrast, it gave +4 points to a bill banning mask mandates. Then there's a whole formula for calculating legislators' Freedom Index scores based on how they voted for those bills. Lobbying organizations like the powerful Idaho Association of Commerce and Industry, IACI, Idaho Business for Education, and ACLU of Idaho also post legislative scorecards. Most do so after the session, but like IFF, IACI rates a bill before lawmakers vote. The difference is, rather than a handful of analysts rating bills like IFF does, more than 300 IACI members can weigh in on how they think a bill should be rated. So far this legislative session, these 5 Republican lawmakers have 100% on the Freedom Foundation's leaderboard. 18 other lawmakers' ratings sit above 80%. That same basic group of Republican lawmakers sat at the top of the leaderboard last year, too.
So who cares about this index? We asked your elected officials inside this building if they do. Several told us they didn't want to talk about it on camera or at all. Those who did talk to us said while some of their conservative colleagues care, they don't.
Okay, let's see.
Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going.
You're under
keep
that.
Going. I'm under the 80%.
Tell me if you see it and if I'm skimming over it.
There you are.
Ha! Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yep.
Keep going.
Oh my goodness.
There I am.
Oh, there you are.
Maybe I didn't even make the cut.
Oh no, you're definitely in it. There you are.
There I am.
Okay.
What is it, 25? 25%?
Oh no, this is this year.
This is this year.
Okay, 50%.
What does this mean to you?
It means not a whole lot, really, because that's an evaluation by somebody the IFF has hired. And my votes are an evaluation that we do after sitting in hours of committee, after talking to dozens of constituents, after getting the best information that we can.
A score is just somebody's opinion of how you're doing. And if the opinion is valid, then I take that to heart. If I think that they're off track a little bit on the values they're putting on the score, that's their prerogative.
Multiple lawmakers and former state senators told me a minority of GOP lawmakers genuinely agree with all the Freedom Foundation's policies and politics.
Well, they do the Freedom Foundation's bidding.
while they feel others are influenced by the index and vote based off of it in order to win the closed Republican primary or stay in power.
You know, the problem with our government right now is that people are too worried about keeping their job instead of doing their job.
Lawmakers say the organization uses low freedom scores against Republicans who don't agree with them, telling voters they're against freedom if they're rated poorly.
Do they serve a purpose for some folks? I think obviously they do. I've received emails and texts about why are your scores so low.
Those who support the IFF out in the community are very vocal and vicious, and to the degree people can duck people attacking them on an issue that maybe they don't personally feel that strongly about. I think some people do.
Well, Priscilla Giddings has a 100% rating.
Former Idaho Supreme Court Justice Jim Jones says
Tammy Nichols is a 99%er.
the Freedom Foundation and Freedom Action hold lawmaker scores against them to intimidate them and get who they want elected during the primaries.
When they don't go along with the suggestions that the Freedom Foundation makes, they end up in election trouble.
On the campaign trail, Jones and others say the group runs smear campaigns against those who don't go along with their asks. Idahoans see it play out in texts, robocalls, mailers.
I think some lawmakers know nothing about a bill other than how the IFF has rated it.
Does that scare you?
It scares the snot out of me. That is not how we should be setting policy.
In fact, multiple lawmakers say many of their colleagues have the index pulled up on their computers on the House floor ahead of a vote.
When the vote comes up on the board and you see a certain amount of red, you say, oh, had a bad score. No matter what the bill is, no matter what the bill is.
Legislators admit they're not experts in everything. So it's not unusual to turn to lobbyists and organizations representing members of the business community, for example, for information on bills. But in the end, lawmakers I talk to don't want one organization having so much sway in how Idaho is run, especially the IFF, whose funding is unclear. I didn't hear from anyone who supports the scoring, and those rated highly declined to interview with us.
Do you think other lobbying groups, though, have as much influence as they have had?
Yes, in the correct way.
And it's not what any one group wants, it's what you truly believe is in the best interest.
I have not been elected to fall in line and like a zombie and just do what I'm told according to a score.
That was Democratic Senator Melissa Wintrow, and actually she points to a time last year when she changed the wording of her bill so that IFF would be okay with it. That bill removed exceptions to raping your spouse. But Wintrow says it was poorly rated because of concerns it would count child marriage as rape. Once she changed it, the Freedom Foundation scored it neutrally. Wintrow says they didn't attack the bill. They didn't intimidate lawmakers on how they would vote for the bill. She admits she did bend to what the group wanted to get the votes she needed.
And it's worth pointing out, you tried to talk to a lot more lawmakers at the Statehouse about this issue. And many said, no thanks.
Yeah, I went up to several. I mean, we just did that candidly. I went up to lawmakers, showed up at the Capitol, and I said, yes, will you talk to us about the Freedom Index? They said, no, that's a can of worms. I'm not even going to touch that. So under federal tax rules, nonprofit charitable organizations like IFF can educate legislators, but they aren't supposed to influence legislation or campaign for or against political candidates. The Freedom Foundation says the index is not intended to serve as either an express or an implied endorsement or rejection of any candidate for public office. But some prominent lawmakers in Idaho politics argue that's exactly what it does. More on that in our next story, airing tomorrow on the 208.
Part 3. Thank you very much, Morgan. That was super interesting.
Yeah,
Really
you bet.
appreciate it.